morning, Junebug. Yay. Hi, June. Oh, so sweet. So wonderful to have everyone joining us. As I said, my 69th community conversation. So I do not pretend to do this work alone. And I want to thank so much my team for helping through these very difficult times. So we have Nicole Vargas, which many of you have spoken to. We have Mark Watson. Yes, everybody give cheers. We have Olivia Vargas, is one of our student interns. Yay. We have Lily Donis. Yay, Lily. Lily's frozen, so we'll just give her cheers right now. And we have a newest member of our student team who I'm not sure he's able to join this morning, but Ishan Sinha, he is joining us. He is a student from Glencoe High School. And so I'm really excited to have students involved and have students excited about understanding more about the civic process and getting involved in government and how a bill becomes a law and researching. Ryan Smith was one of our former student interns, and he is at Yale University. And he is, he helped with research when we were working on the bag bill and such. So it's pretty exciting to have students engaged in this process. I want to just take a moment to acknowledge that our state continues to feel inundated by pain and trauma, whether we are still processing and still working through, still currently in our pandemic, so still dealing with COVID issues, and so the safety of that is very concerning. Still working through our racial justice issues that need to be on the forefront of our talking and working through and finding solutions to help move that work forward. And we have 1 million acres of land here in Oregon that it has burned. And we here in Hillsborough are fortunate to be safe and not have flames be something that we are impacted and concerned about, though our air quality is extremely poor. So it's important that people, I may repeat that several times throughout, is making sure that people know to stay indoors and stay out of this air. But we really acknowledge the amount of folks that are working towards helping us in our safety, our first responders, whether they are firefighters that are directly impacted right there on the front lines, fighting these fires, the Chehalem fire and the Powerline fire over by Hag Lake, currently are 70% contained, which is a fantastic move in the right direction. We have been blessed by our winds that have died down, and there is hope and a weather forecast for some rain coming to us. It might just be a little bit, but man, we'll take it. And so we have our firefighters that are doing that, and so really making sure that I want to do a complete shout out for our Tualatin Valley firefighters and our Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue and our Hillsborough firefighters that are also on the call and being involved. Also our law enforcement that are really out there helping people with evacuations, helping people to take care of calls that are coming in with concerns, whether it's about looting or really still being on the alert and helping people. So our law enforcement agents, officers are on the call as well. So really want to acknowledge that, and of course our 911 dispatchers, who I consider first responders as well, because they are the call on the other end of that phone line when you are feeling that moment of needing that help. And want to really also repeat what folks have asked us to repeat too, is to make sure that when you're calling 911, it's not smelling smoke, it's not that concern. It's really if you're seeing fire and or you're seeing something that is an absolute emergency safety issue. So we are all in Oregon just covered in that smoke. And so right now their call centers are being inundated with calls. And when those calls are coming through, it prevents them from being on those other calls. So just want to make sure to repeat that. I also want to acknowledge, and I'm probably going to say this several times as well, I'm going to acknowledge that we are feeling a lot of feelings. Like there's a lot that we are processing. And it is hard not to be emotional when we carry all of that. You know, whether you're Nicole on the other line of, on the other side of all those emails or phone calls that are coming in, whether it's students that are experiencing stress or us just seeing what is going on around us or knowing that family and friends are impacted, it's a lot to process. And I have described 2020 as an onion. And it's a rather crappy onion because it is like layer after layer of something. And you peel back and you think, okay, this is it. Next layer is going to be great. And it's a crappy layer too. So I just really want to acknowledge that myself this morning, as you can probably hear it in my voice, I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm feeling sad. I even feel a bit unprepared for this meeting because I want so much to be like, you have that concern, I want to provide you that answer, but I want you to know I may not have this answer right now, but we're going to get it to you. So I want you to know that our office, please utilize that as a resource. And again, I can't thank Nicole enough for being on on the other side of those emails and trying to research, and Mark helping so much with connecting people with answers. I'm really feeling hopeful as well. I'm feeling hopeful in the fact that I've seen a lot of good around. Isn't it something that yesterday was the 19th anniversary of 9/11? And during that time, it made me think about all the folks that rushed in, the first responders that rushed in to help. It made me think about all the people that were helping other people in situations. And it made me then reflect and think about what we're experiencing now and what we're seeing. The people that are reaching out. Man, I feel like the power of a text is so important. Just checking in with people to let people know that you're thinking about them, I think is really something. So we have a relatively small group, so I have other things also to talk about, but let me just take that break and that moment to listen in on if folks want to really share anything about what brings them here or things that they're feeling or thing that they're experiencing or hopeful for. I don't want to put anybody on the spot. So if you just don't want to and you want to sit here and watch me talk on, I certainly can do so.
Okay. May I?
Yes.
I'm going to switch in terms of what my concern is for a fact, and maybe Mark or Nicole may have the answer or know where to get the answer. And that is this morning, as I was a few minutes ahead of time, which is my on time, I noted that in the neighborhood thing online that there's a Harwood and there was possibly a Harwood and Glencoe fire, a spit of some sort. And I'm a home care worker and a personal support worker. which means I work with seniors and people with disabilities as well as developmental disabilities, human beings. And I happen to have a person I work with off of Harwood. And so I was interested if any of you people are aware or know what the consequences and the status of that little fire are.
I actually learned about this from friends who live in the area, who said that this had occurred, but it did show that it was contained, that the Hillsborough fire folks came right out and took care of it. It is hard to say, at this point what caused it. I can say that climate impacts are impacting our wildfires. That is an absolute, not a political statement. It is a reality. It is a reality that the type of we are absolutely impacted. So currently, everything is so incredibly dry, and it is, whether the smallest spark. I think I read one of the fires that was down in Central Oregon area was caused by a motorhome that was pulling a Jeep that had something that was dragging and causing a spark. Well, it started a fire with the Jeep, and then it started a fire, the motorhome caught on fire, which then spread out to vegetation. So it is just such the perfect storm of everything, how our wind patterns are going right now, how the vegetation is completely dry, the air conditions that we're feeling. It is a perfect storm. And so just want you to know, Carolyn, it is contained. So there's nothing to worry about on Harewood.
Okay, I thought it's done.
Yep.
Done. No more need for firefighters. Is that
not for that particular? From what I understand, that one was completely contained. Mark is probably looking up.
Yes, according to the City of Hillsborough Police Department Twitter feed, official Twitter feed, 15 hours ago, they said the fire personnel were on the scene of a brush fire at Northwest Glencoe Road in Harwood. Firefighters have contained it. It is not threatening any structures, and no evacuations are needed.
Okay, good.
15 hours ago.
And I can, great. Another thing is that observation, I observed about 6 people smoking at the corner on the other side of the street of that beautiful complex of apartments as I left yesterday about 4:30. And it's interesting that there was the notation on the community thing online said 5:30. So I feel glad that I got out before the commotion occurred.
Yeah. And again, we don't know what caused it. A lot of folks were
I observed that, and I'm hoping that the smokers find a safer place to smoke.
Yeah. And again, it's just, we're all so much on heightened alert. The other day I was sitting here on Wednesday and I heard some neighbors that they have a field and they were riding their four-wheelers. And I was just like, is this the time? And then, neighbors were doing landscaping and having the mowers come out and everything else. And in normal times, that's all like everyday weekly occurrence around here at my house. But I think we're so heightened because we know that our first responders and our firefighters are stretched. They are so stretched that that's concerning, right? And so, like I said, we're so heightened. So it's important to be aware of your surroundings and what's happening around there. But our emotions are just like, man, we all need to take a lot of deep breaths. I don't know about you, but square breathing is like, brings me back into some grounding. So thank you, Carolyn, for sharing that. I don't know if anyone else wants to share anything or any concerns. Joe?
You mentioned firefighters being stretched thin. And I know Governor Newsom of California just, I think yesterday, signed a bill into law telling the state that convicted felons, once released, who have been involved with firefighting,
Yep.
can become professional firefighters. I don't know. I've talked with folks at the library here. I don't have a definitive answer as to whether or not that's true here in
Yeah.
Oregon, but I would love to know.
Joe, I swear you and I are like, because yesterday, I kid you not, and Nicole and Mark, if they've looked at their Asana, which is our online to-do, electronic to-do list, when I saw that, I think it's AB 1247, is that right? 12? I think it sounds right. I saw that he had signed that, and I put that down as something to investigate and to look at for Oregon to see if that is an issue in Oregon. And we have bill deadlines for pre-session filing. And if it is a situation that Oregon is impacted the same way, I will be putting a bill forward for this session regarding that. I've seen firsthand, I've seen not only our youth that are on fire lines and in fire crews, but through our OYA facilities, our Oregon Youth Authority facilities. But I have seen where, in fact, one of my friends who has a relative that is incarcerated, he is on a fire crew. And so I know what they are doing, and they are out there. I think this morning on the Department of Corrections Twitter feed, I saw that Coffee Creek, AICs, we call them, adults in custody. I saw they were on the fire lines and protecting and fighting. I will tell you, perfect Janine style, I did happen to take a screenshot of that because I did notice one of them did not have a ventilator mask. And I want to make sure that something I'm going to send to my legislative contact is, if you're sending those folks and they are participating in that, we want to make sure they have all the tools that our firefighters get. Being out here in this weather, in this air quality, they need to have that protection. So that is something that I took a screenshot up and going to share and ask the question. So thank you, Joe, for bringing that up.
Well, thank you. Can I mention one other thing?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. So my other concern about the fires is voting. Mm-hmm. So I contacted Washington County Elections Office and got some information regarding how people who have been displaced can contact the state. And I'd like to forward that to somebody in your organization and ask that it be, spread throughout the state so that people know, because this is our most important franchise ever.
Yeah.
So, all right. So I'll forward that to you.
Okay. Thank you. Sure. I appreciate that. And I know with Olivia being on the Youth Advisory Council for Hillsborough, one of the groups that they have for their group is voting and civic engagement and helping inform the youth. So it's really exciting to see YAC take that direction too, as well. And also, please make sure you notice that, oh, bye, Jenny. And make sure you notice in the chat that Mark is dropping some links for you. Oh, I had the numbers wrong. It wasn't 1247, it was 2147, but hey, not bad for the old ticker. So there is some information there. And Nicole as well, dropping that stuff in. See, takes a village, I tell you, people. So does anyone else have anything, that they kind of want to share on that or concern? Because
I would appreciate it would be easier for me to get the handle on it if you email me the information regarding voting when you've been mucked by the fires.
Yeah.
I'm interested in the people of Oregon being able to vote. So I'd appreciate that information by email if you would, one of you who's disseminating that. on the chat thing, I'm listening to you, and I can't keep track of
Oh, you don't have to.
everything in chat if I have to take flat information on,
You
listen.
absolutely don't have to, because what we're going to do is we're going to copy and paste all of those and put those resources together in an email to everyone that has registered. So I just want you to know you will get that information. We have been given special permission. There's a blackout period for newsletters when we use our legislative list,
Yeah.
but we have been given permission to give very specific wildfire COVID related information out to people. So I may inquire to see if this is a gray area or if we could do this, because to me, it does absolutely have to do with COVID and with wildfires. So I'll see if we can put that information in a newsletter as well.
There's two things. By the way, the legislators are really definitely going to be interested in that.
Yeah.
And my mother is in Sacramento, and she's savvy as you can't believe at 98. And she gave me, I talked with her yesterday, and she's cool. And she gave me a website that you people might be interested in. It's called A as in apple, I as in it, R as in red, N as in now, O as in W, the O now, like women's now. And it's .gov. You might want to check it out. I haven't yet had time. And so I'm just passing it on for your info. It may be a really good one. She said that 2.5, it has to do with air quality.
Yeah.
And in Sacramento, it's 2.5, and she understands that's pretty this way.
Yeah.
And so anybody who wants to look at that, and that's the perspective that I have at this point in time.
Yeah, I know it's been really critical. I know a friend of mine recently told me, because she was out and about, and I said, you should be home. And she said, to me, it reminds me of living in Indonesia. So it really doesn't affect me. And I said, well, actually, we're actually worse than many of those places. We're like having I think Nicole pointed out to me at one point where it was like we were the worst air quality in the world in this area.
They said that on the news this morning.
Yeah. Yeah, and so it's really critical that a lot of times I'll look to see when my son works in Vernonia outside, because he does the line clearance, the trees and stuff below the lines, the power lines. I'm looking to see what the air quality is for him there, or where my other son lives in Monmouth, and just to kind of look at that. So I often will look at those sites as well. I want to provide an opportunity to share with folks that a couple of things. One is it's important, as I said, to reiterate that think about when you're on an airplane and there's a change in the cabin pressure and that little mask drops. They tell you if you're traveling with someone to make sure that you're putting it on yourself first, and then you can better help others. And I think that that's really critical in everything that we're experiencing, in all the stress and all of this trauma, that it's important for us to really think about taking care of ourselves. So that's why I kind of talked about making sure that you're acknowledging the feelings that you're feeling, and taking the time to consider those and think about where you're at. Also, to make sure that you're connecting with people. I know that this is normally we'd be around the library table for these meetings, but I know that even when we're out of this crisis, because we're getting out, we will be around that table again. But I'm still going to continue these ways, this type of meeting as well, because I really feel that it's important, to connect with people who may not have that time or that luxury of being able to get themselves to a meeting. So I want to make sure that folks also know that it's important to detach from the news. My mom is 87 years old, and for her to just sit in her home and watch news after news, I hear it in her voice when she calls, that heightened stress. And so it's important to step back from that and, just really detach yourself to not doing that and listening to that around the clock. Also, I mentioned staying home, staying out of the smoke. That is so incredibly important. I want to say that also two things. One is I think that in crisis we see, and whether we're experiencing, and these poor people that are just impacted by the fires and were given very little notice to leave. It is heartbreaking to think about looking around and wondering, what is it I'll take? What would I need to take? So I think that this situation, whether it's COVID or this type of situation, is to prepare for those emergencies, to think about that. Red Cross has resources that you can go to, that you can check out, and you can follow and watch and see what you need to do to be prepared for an emergency. I want to share, and we'll also share this. I saw a list that was put out on social media that said, if you have 15 minutes, if you have this much time, these are the things that you should make sure that you're grabbing. Because, in a heightened state of emotion, you're not thinking clearly. And so you may not grab medications or something that you need. And I also want to share that I'm not going to share the personal story of who this is about, because I wasn't given permission to do that. But I want you to know that even our youth are thinking about that, right? Our kids are thinking, because they may watch the news, they may hear some conversations. And so I heard a story where there was a young elementary student that took upon herself to write out and talk with her family about the things that they should possibly think about considering having to take in case of an emergency. So our kids are processing this as well. I think that shows that not only they're processing this and listening and soaking all of that in, but also I think it really highlights a very mature young lady who was really trying to be there and help for her family. So I wanted to share that's happening. And I want to make sure that you know that there are places that you can donate to. That helps your own well-being, knowing that you feel so helpless and you're not sure what you can do to help. You can donate to the Red Cross. You can give to them. They need resources. You can give time if you're able to. A lot of their volunteer force, their volunteers are older, and so they're impacted by COVID. So making sure that if you can do that, consider that. Also, donating blood. I signed up October 2nd. I'll be over here at the Orenco Presbyterian Church to give blood. So I want to mention that those are things that you can do for yourself to help yourself process all of this. And obviously helping others is also in that Red Cross, that some of these kind of coincide. Wilco in Cornelius is taking donations because they are providing feed and shavings and different things for animals that are being cared for at the Washington County Fairgrounds, or West Side Commons as they call it. So that those are, you can make donations there at that Wilco. And also just in helping others, as I mentioned, making sure that you're checking in on people. And that can be as simple as a text. That can be just reaching out to somebody, say, hey, I'm thinking about you. How are you today? I just was texting my friend, my colleague, Representative Pam Marsh in Southern Oregon. And it was a very good exchange. And I think she just appreciated knowing that someone so distant had her, was thinking about her. So please consider that and think about doing that in helping others. And also just in reassuring, I'm a volunteer with Meals on Wheels. I make my weekly calls to seniors, homebound seniors on Thursdays, and just talking with seniors to let them know we're going to get through this. I realize that this is stressful. Carolyn, in your line of work, you probably experience this and see this. So I think it's very important that we're providing that reassurance. And we're doing that. So those are things you can do to help yourself and help others. And I wanted to give Lily, our student intern, an opportunity. She's going to give us a little bit of insight of being a incoming junior at Liberty High School. And, our school districts are busily preparing to educate students. This is not something they would much rather be face-to-face, but they know for safety issues that distance learning is the safest option for staff, students. And so that is the plan at this moment. Mark does serve on the Hillsborough School Board. He's very much involved in all of these decisions and all of these updates, such as because of the air quality, they'd stopped delivering food on Friday and on the buses, and that kids and families could come to the schools to certain areas to pick up, but they didn't want to go out on the roads. They were trying to protect folks around that, having to stand out and wait for food. So, and it's important to really follow along if you're concerned about schools and such, is to look at the Hillsborough School District website for information. They can share updates and such as well. But I had talked to Lily yesterday, and we were talking about her school experience, and I thought, I could sit here and talk about that, but I thought it would be best to really give you a student's perspective. And Lily agreed to share with you her thoughts and on this upcoming school year and how she's getting prepared. So please, Lily, take it away.
Thank you. Hi to everyone. So as Jenny said earlier, I'm going to junior year this year, which, as many people know, junior year is usually considered like very, busy. You're always doing stuff. And I will say that at the very beginning, before probably, throughout the summer, I was nervous because as you go along every day, you're like, okay, it doesn't look like we're going to be going back. So what's the plan now? And as we got closer, I started seeing, all of the teachers and all the staff from the school reaching out, which I thought was really amazing. Just being able to hear, they made sure everyone at my school knew what was going to be happening and, made sure everyone was getting opportunities. And so for me, the first thing we did was go through this, it's called the fly through. And so we went through, we would pick up our schedules. But usually, all the students would be crowded together into the school, getting to say hi to everyone, just kind of get ready to get back. And of course, we couldn't do that this year, but being able to drive through and still see the staff, but they were all wearing masks and everything felt so safe. So I thought that was really nice. And just the school is starting officially on Monday, but they've already told us what the schedule is going to look like. And I was really happy to see where usually for our school, we have 8 classes and 8 teachers that we would go to. But now instead what they're doing is we have 4 teachers only every day for each quarter of school. So I'm going to have my teacher every other quarter, if that makes sense. And I think that's really nice because I get to have a connection with my teacher. That I think is something really important to have is, have a teacher-student relationship, and I'm still going to be able to do that with less teachers, and also just have a better and less hectic way of doing it with only having 4 classes to focus on. And another thing is that we can't do sports, but they are still doing clubs. So last night, actually, I did my first meeting with my robotics team at my school, and you can tell all the teachers, it's run by a program called FIRST, and even everyone is so focused on getting all of the students every opportunity they can, even though we may not be able to see each other in person. So I think it's just really awesome to be able to see that and know that there's still other students who are just as ready and excited to get to do things, even though we can't be in the same place. Physically, we're still there mentally. So I think that's just so awesome. And also the AP classes, we have to take AP exams. That's still going to be a thing. And you can see that the AP classes are trying so hard to make sure that we get everything that we can get and learn as much as possible before that exam. and make sure we're all prepared. So yeah, that's just kind of like the lay down of what it looks like at my school. But personally, I'm so enthusiastic to get back and just get to meet new teachers and new students. So yeah.
Thank you, Lily. I appreciate you sharing that perspective. I think it's great to hear from folks. I know that, our students, whether elementary, high school, middle school, high school, they're all experiencing a different range of emotions. I know that, Olivia coming into being an incoming senior, that those are extremely, it's extremely difficult because we all can remember our opportunities and things going on in our senior year. So I'm sure Olivia is experiencing all those range of emotions as well. And I appreciate your willingness to share that. So I also want to make sure that we had opportunity to pre-submit questions. And so we had a pre-submitted question, and it was, what are your thoughts on business liability protection legislation? And I appreciate that conversation. I want you to know that I support providing businesses some liability protection in very tight parameters. And those are, if there are set guidelines that the governor has set, and we have OSHA guide, we have those guidelines. And if businesses are, and I want to really mention, this isn't just about business. These are about our schools as well. So if businesses and schools are meeting those guidelines and following those standards, we should provide them some protection. And the reason is because I know, being a former school board member, there would be the potential that there would be, if the protections weren't there, there could be potentially a lot of lawsuits that come forward that that would not necessarily, perhaps they would get paid out, like they wouldn't fight if there was a great abundance of them, and they could potentially, not only our small businesses be impacted by that, but I want to just really specifically speak on those schools, because if a school is inundated with potential lawsuits, it is very difficult for them to fight all of them, and that does come out of school funding. So I just want to be really clear that if a business is following guidelines, if they are doing what they know are the standards, then we should provide them a level of protection, just as we should provide a level of protection for our workers as well, making sure that our workers have that protection as well. I want to say that I work for a company that I think have gone above and beyond. I mean, everything when I walked in, I work there a lot on the weekends. Right now, I normally would be there during the week. But I thought they were just going above and beyond of all the different details that they were doing to keep people safe. But there was still there was a complaint lodged through OSHA saying, I don't feel safe at work. And having those liability protections does not mean that someone that cuts off the ability for someone to pursue a legal means if they truly feel that they have been, that their safety is at risk. Having those liability protections does not mean that. It just, but it does give them, it does provide a layer of, if it is proven that these standards and these requirements have been met, then they are less likely to have to go through a legal process. Mark has even put in some OSHA guidelines for employers. Those are updated. And I think that for the company that I've worked for, now OSHA will come out and they will do a walkthrough, and they will look at having those protections. Doesn't still stop that, right? They still have the ability to do this. Anyone can put through a complaint through OSHA, and they are extremely busy right now. And so having that liability protection does not stop the ability for people to go through those means of filing a complaint or seeking legal avenue if that is the way it goes, if that's the direction it needs to go. So, but I am very concerned about our schools. I'm concerned that I know that for them to get back to a hybrid model, whether it's doing partly comprehensive, someday maybe being able to introduce some students back into a classroom, there needs to be a level of not only making sure those guidelines are real strict and really out there to really show that students and staff are protected, but we also need to make sure that we are protecting our school districts from continuous lawsuits in this issue. And it is possible that the school districts might come forward, and not Hillsborough directly, but the Oregon School Boards Association, they're pursuing and looking at what kind of protections that they can put into place for their schools in order for them to look forward. And we will believe in science. We will watch science. I appreciate the governor's action on this to make sure that levels are, that we're following those guidelines to know when students and staff can safely come back. So that will be definitely followed, but we need to make sure that our schools have a level of protection for them so that they can continue and explore this hybrid possibility. I know that right now students are going to be comprehensive distance learning through November, and then they will reevaluate to see where we're at for outbreaks and such before they determine what the next quarter will be. And I just want to open it up too to make sure that is the only submitted question. If the person who asked me that, I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but if that person wants to ask me more about that or follow up with their own comments, they certainly can do so.
I just wanted to say that was an absolutely fantastic answer, Janine. I really appreciate your knowledge and expertise in this. It's fantastic. I think you strike the right balance between making sure we're protecting workers and making sure that everyone who goes into those businesses are safe, but also recognizing that there is a level at which businesses can only do so much and schools can only do so much before we need to add a layer of protection. So fantastic.
Yeah, thank you, Anthony. I know this has been a deep concern for not only, as I mentioned, our school districts, but our small businesses are deeply impacted by this pandemic. I try to tell people who, I call them frequent flyers that I have that often send me emails. I usually like to respond to them. And I tell them that, because they're wanting Oregon to open up. And it's like, I understand the concern about protecting our, and making sure that our businesses receive that business, but there are ways that we can do this. And I have said this all along, there are ways that we can be protecting each other with our masks. And why this mask situation has become something so about so much a political statement than about a safety statement is beyond me. When you go to other countries and they experience bad air quality, whether you're in China, masks are they wear it. They know that it is a health impact. And so for me, making sure that there are ways that we can support our businesses, but there are ways that we can do it safely and continue, to help them. And Joe, you have a comment or question?
I do, because you mentioned people in other countries wearing masks. Don't you think, or do you think, that it's because these countries with socialized medicine have one platform? It's not the president not wearing a mask and, Bernie Sanders saying everybody needs to wear one. we are so divided in this country, and because we do not have universal health care, we don't have a common platform to work from.
So I hear you on that, and I would like to add that it is important that we have it recognized, even from the highest position in our country, that recognize the science behind this pandemic, recognize the health impacts, and sharing with people the importance of having that protection. But we have had such mixed messages. We have become a divided states of America that people are not certain as to where they're getting their information from. And if they look to the highest position in our country, you would hope that that person could say, we're going to get through this. We're going to do this, but we need to do these measures in order to beat this. But we're not getting those consistent messages. We're not getting, and people are too skeptical, and some feed into some of that conversation and rhetoric, and it's dangerous. I feel it's just dangerous. So, and I have to tell
Medicare
you,
for all, everybody.
you what?
So Medicare for all, everybody. That's what we need.
Making sure that I absolutely, even making sure that a lot of those countries look at healthcare as a right and should not be a privilege. And it shouldn't be determined on your income, shouldn't be determined. It is what I've told people all along is that until we get Oregonians healthy, we can't concentrate on making the businesses and considering boosting them. We first have to get Oregonians healthy. We have to make sure that people are safe. We have to make sure that people are adhering to medical information and following those guidelines. And then we can concentrate on the rebuilding. But meanwhile, we are seeing a plateau, and we are seeing situations here in Oregon go in the right direction. We still need it. We still need to be stronger. And even there's great concerns with so many of these folks having to be displaced from their homes and being placed in, in centers, and how they're trying to make sure that people are keeping physically distanced to be safe. That's a concern. And so we're not just dealing with folks having that stress of being displaced and what we're also dealing with the fact that we're still in a pandemic, and we need to be paying attention to the COVID concerns as well. So I think that above all, we need to make sure that we're concentrating on keeping people healthy. And I get it. This is an unbelievable year that people are, not sure that they can continue at this pace of staying home and doing the measures that they need to do. But we have to. We absolutely have to do this until we have a means of a vaccination that has been completely and utterly vetted by science and have no means of political at all. It absolutely, until we have that, even Dr. Fauci has said that we're not going to potentially be returning back to normal until well into 2021. So we absolutely need to still remain on alert about this. Not sure if folks have other questions on other items, or anyone want to spread some good about what's happening and what they're seeing?
I'm kind of curious. So the wildfires have definitely brought in to focus how I think everyone knows Oregon's been a little underprepared for fire preparedness for a while, underfunded it for several years. This has really shown that kind of, you reap what you sow. What are your thoughts on how we can get to a better point of managing our forests, fully funding our fires, and also, fingers crossed, not using prison labor for firefighting. I'm curious to get your thoughts on those.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, well, we actually had, through our energy and environment in the 2020 session, we had a wildfire prevention bill, a plan that we had, that had been worked out through agencies, through the governor's office. It didn't get a vote, and it didn't get a vote because folks didn't stick in Salem to finish the session. During the 2020 session, we saw 3 bills that were completed. And so that's just a fact, is that there was some action potentially. Was it the absolute answer be all? It was a move in the right direction. In fact, what I personally, near and dear to me, is it had some real action forward on wildfire protections regarding line clearance. And that is what my son does, right? But the importance of making sure that we're taking care of all of those fire starters, removing the vegetation that needs to be cleared out so that it doesn't become the means of the spark of where that can start a fire. Learning from our neighbors from the south, in the Paradise Fire being such, ignited and such through power lines. Learning from our neighbors to know that we need to make sure that we're clearing that vegetation. Back in the day, I had the most sweetest, dearest client from Meals on Wheels. Her name was Betty. At the time, I remember she was 91, so she must be 95 now. But her brother was part of the youth corps, the CCC, the conservation. Oh my gosh, I always get that wrong. Mark's probably like looking, but it's the conservation, CCC. Back in the 30s, back in the Depression time, where they had these, they would go out and they would clear the land and make sure that all that underbrush was taken care of, so that those fire starters were not available in there. It offered them opportunity for employment. Many of them not only would get paid for that process, but also it led on to other jobs for them. But we need to make sure that we're investing in taking care of all of maintaining that undergrowth, and that if folks don't really consider and think about and believe that, or want to believe that these wildfires are all completely started by arsonists and such. No, we have to, these are climate fires. Our Western states would not see the impacts that we are seeing with fires if we didn't have all the conditions that I said were coming together and met the perfect storm for these fires. And we absolutely need to make sure that we are working forward to have those protections. So yeah, it's the Conservation Corps. I think, yeah, it was like Civilian Conservation Corps, the CCC. So yeah, there it is. Mark, now I see Mark's. I saw Carolyn's, I didn't see Mark's. So we need to make sure that we're bringing forward those bills in 2021, and we need to make sure that we have to have folks that are coming to those jobs that will be willing to stay at those jobs. Stay on as a legislator. You have committed yourself to that position, and walking out is not an option. So we need to make sure that we are that we have folks committed who are going to stay and do the work that they need to do, represent their communities, represent their districts. But we need to make sure that is what we do, is we complete these. Having a short session and 3 bills passed is not effective, efficient, nor it's very expensive to Oregon to do. So. I don't know if anybody else has any other. Joe, you had something that I think you wanted to say.
Yes, thank you. Just one other thing. A few weeks back, I had sent some information, and I know you're getting inundated with emails and phone calls and everything. But because schools are going to be virtual for the next foreseeable future, I wanted to recommend a 4-class online information sharing about voting and elections and campaign finance. A woman named Donna Cohen is a teacher and librarian. She's been doing these for years. It's 4 1.5-hour sessions. I just went through them in August again for about the 3rd time. She's given them at the Hillsborough Library. She does them all over the state. And I thought, because we have high school students, we have current school board members and former school board members on this call, it would be the perfect opportunity to mention this and to let you know the class titles, the course titles. The first is Misinformation, Fake News, and Political Propaganda. The second is Beyond Voting, Elections and Campaign Finance. The third is The Constitution, Fulfilling Democracy's Promise. And the fourth is Citizen Activism 101, Making Change Happen. And what I love about Donna and how she runs these is that it's current information, and it's fascinating. I learn something new every single time I take these classes, and I thought high school students right now are yearning for change. I mean, young people all over this country are yearning for, hell, 65, I'm yearning for change. And the only way I know to give this information out there is through somebody like you, Janine, to maybe see if there's a way to have Hillsborough schools or Washington County schools take on this program. I think it would be a real asset. And because kids are at the point in high school of being voters, this is an ideal time. And I don't think civics are really being taught in school anymore. And so, not to the degree they need to be anyway. And so this is a really good, short but sweet, eye-opening series. And it's interactive, just like with you here today. So I highly recommend it. And if you'd like, I'll resend the information. Or if you already have it, please pass it on or do whatever can be done to bring this to the fore.
Yeah, I definitely will share. I'll share that on social media, and I know that Mark can look at sharing that with the district as a if that's a possibility. Is it still given through the library? Still, she's running it.
Well, she goes to various libraries throughout the year. I don't know what her schedule is, but when I was on this last series, I mentioned to her the possibility of Washington County, and she thought it was a great idea. So, it would just be a matter of getting with her and having somebody actually go through the class with her to see what it's all about. It's a day's worth of material.
Yeah, I think if I remember right, before this was before this virtual, she did provide classes at the Brookwood Library.
She did. Absolutely.
We can look into it. I know that I am happy to share her information on my social media, and and Mark can gather the information, and he can put that through with folks too, and maybe it's something that YAC students, the Youth Advisory Council, might want to take a look at the links and such to share with the group, especially that civics group. And I also want to mention that in the chat too, that Nicole found, it was House Bill 40. You hearing that? Are you guys hearing? Okay, 4066. So yeah. So we are at time. We are actually 1 minute over. I really, really appreciate that you have taken the time today to join in this conversation. Please make sure that you stay engaged and reach out when you need to. And we will be sending these links out in an email to those that have registered, so that you don't have to worry about busily writing things down or copy and pasting. Yes, thank you so much. As Maura has pointed out, thank you so much to the team. Thank you so much to Nicole and Mark and our students, Lily and Olivia, for joining today and for providing all that information at people's fingertips, because it truly does take a village. And it feels overwhelming and it feels heavy, but we are going to get through it. And remember to take care of yourself first. Make sure you're paying attention to those cues within yourself. Make sure that you can do what you can to help others. And it may be through a donation, it may be through a text or phone call, but making sure that you're reaching out and letting others know that you are there. So thank you again for joining and this 69th community conversation. Be good to yourself and be good to others. So take care.